This TED Talk will do you absolutely no good whatsoever. This TED Talk will do you absolutely no good unless you decide to take action today. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, not next year, but today. Now, as you can probably tell by my accent, I was not born in this country. I was born in England in 1942. And shortly before the war, just shortly after the war ended, my parents decided to send me to a boys' private school in Sussex, which was very common back in those days. I was actually 4.5 years old. Can you imagine 4.5-year-old kid going to a private school? Uniforms, boys only. And the highlight of our year was the sports day, which was held in every June. And the highlight of the sports day was the half mile for 10-year-olds. And I thought, even as a 4.5, 5-year-old boy, one day I'd like to be in that race. And as it happened, I was 10 years old, and I tried out for the sports day for 10-year-olds, the half mile, 4 times around the track. Well, I didn't make the cut. They picked the top 15 runners, and I wasn't it. But I was okay with that because I was in lots of other events. But the interesting thing is, post-war England, there weren't enough trophies that were available at the school, so parents sent different trophies for different races. And my mother sent a trophy for the half mile for 10-year-olds, the event that I was not in. They picked the top 15 runners. I didn't make the cut. So I want you to see this picture. It's breakfast. 350 students, all in uniforms, all standing at attention, waiting for the headmaster to walk in. And the headmaster walked in, and before he said, "You can speak," you weren't allowed to speak until he said, "Boys, you can speak." He sought me out and he said, "Legge, you were too slow for the half mile. But your mother sent a trophy for the half mile. I guess I'll have to put you in the race." Now, this is not great motivation for a 10-year-old boy, let me tell you. So there I was, the 16th runner in a 15-person race. Beautiful sunshine day in June. Hundreds of parents, my mother and my father and my grandmother were there. The bands were playing. And it was the half-mile race for 10-year-olds, 4 times around the track. Bang, the gun goes off. At the end of the first lap, I'm where I should be, in 16th position. Except out of the corner of my eye, I could see my mother and my father and my grandmother. And I said, "You better get your butt in gear." No, that's not true. Because way back then I was English. I probably said something like, "I say, Mummy and Daddy and Grandmama, I'd best get a move on." At the end of the second lap, I'm now in 9th position. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see my mother and my father and my grandmother yelling encouragement for their son to win this race. At the end of the third lap, I'm now in 4th position, and my mother and my grandmother and my father are standing on their chair yelling something encouragement for their son to win. And I thought to myself, nobody is going to win my mother's trophy. Nobody else is going to win my mother's trophy. And miracles of miracles, on that beautiful day, many, many years ago, I won that trophy. And I was presented, thank you, I was presented by my mother. Is she stunning? There I am, a 10-year-old boy with the trophy. Tavistock Hall School in Sussex. That trophy I still have today. That trophy is on my mantle at home to remind me that if we're going to win anything, we have to be a participant. If we're certainly going to win a race, we've got to be in that race to win. Now, I've been in lots of races over the years and I haven't won them. That's okay. But you don't stand a chance to win that race, any race that you're in, unless you are a participant, unless you can think, "I could win this race." My mother was the motivation for that. Came to Canada, worked in the radio business for CJOR, which is a radio station that's no longer in existence. And I was a salesman, and my first client was Field's Department Store. And the owner of Field's Department Store way back then was a chap by the name of Joe Siegel. Now, Joe and I hit it off, and we've been friends for over 50 years. In fact, he has been my main mentor in life, and he has helped me shape my thinking. We have lunch every 4 or 5 weeks at the U restaurant. Back then, it was a different restaurant. And a number of years ago, we were having lunch, and there was a piece of paper in front of me, and he said, Peter, pick up that piece of paper and draw a straight line from one side to the other. Now, this is something you could do later on today. It's a good exercise. There's no right or wrong answer. Draw a straight line from one side to the other, and then on the left-hand side of the line, you put how old you were when you were born. Well, we've all got that one right. It was 0. And then on the right-hand side of the line, you put the age you think you will be when you meet your maker. Well, I put 85, 0 to 85. And I said, Joe, what is that? He said, that is your runway of life. 4,420 weeks, which doesn't sound nearly as long as 85 years. He said, now what I want you to do is proportionately on that line, and this is something you should do as well, proportionally on that line, mark your current age. Well, way back then I was 60. So he said from 60 back to 0, or from the mark that you put where you are today, back to 0, is prologue, is history, is past, it's over, it's done with. You can't change a solitary thing. You can learn from it, but you can't change a thing. So your runway of life, Peter, is from 60 to 85. I said, what does that mean, Joe? He said, that means you got 25 Christmas dinners left. And he's Jewish. 25 Easters, 25 wedding anniversaries, 25 AGMs at your company, 25 golf seasons, 25 somethings. And then he looked me in the eye and he said, and what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? Every single day, what are you going to do with it? In the 1950s, the then Dean of Motivational Speakers was a man named Earl Nightingale. Great radio voice from Chicago. And he recorded the first audio album, and it was called The Strangest Secret. And he determined that this was the strangest secret. Now, way back then, he said if you took 100 men, now you couldn't say that today, you'd have to say 100 men and women. But way back then, there weren't nearly as many women in business. So let's stick with what Earl said. He said if you took 100 men at age 25 and tracked them to 65, what would happen to them? 1 would be financially independent. 4 would be relatively well off. 5 would still be working. And 54% would be flat broke. How is that possible in the 2 greatest economies the world has ever known, Canada and the United States? How is that possible? Because they all started out saying, yes, I'm going to be successful. Yes, I'm going to work at it. Yes, I'm going to take action on my ideas. But 54% would be dependent on the state or the province or the country for their pensions, for their well-being. And they'd done that from 25 to 65. And he said, this is the strangest secret. He said, you become exactly what you think about most of the time. Pretty simple, eh? You become exactly what you think about most of the time. So the question I ask you to ask yourself today is, what do you think about? What occupies your mind? What occupies your thoughts? What occupies all the hours that you're awake? For your dream, for your vision, for your future, for your family. You become what you think about most of the time, and it happens every day. My father passed away when he was 85. I really love my dad. He developed cancer in the last 2.5 weeks of his life, and he was in the Royal Columbian Hospital. And my wife and my 3 girls were in his room every single day for the entire day. And we were hoping and we were praying that there would be a visiting nurse or a visiting doctor or somebody that had some kind of serum, somebody would have some kind of penicillin, somebody would have some kind of luxury drug or something that we could afford that would extend my father's life, but that was not to be. And on the last Sunday of his life, I didn't know it was exactly going to be the last Sunday of his life. The nurse, her name was Nurse Ruth Stevens of the Royal Columbian Hospital, phoned us at home, and we live in Coquitlam. And she said, Peter, your father is dying. You need to get to the hospital right away. What would normally take about 25, almost 30 minutes, we were in his room in 12 minutes. But before I hung up from Ruth Stevens, the nurse, I said, I want you to go up to my father and do not move, and you whisper in his ear, your son is coming. Your son is coming. We walked into a hospital room with my wife and 3 girls, and there was my father laying in his bed. I picked up his hand and I said, Dad, I want you to know how much I love you. What a special father you have been. You never gave up on me. Even those years when I was 14, 15, and 16 where you probably should have given up on me, you never did. You hung in there. You loved me. I want to thank you for loving my mother and showing me what it took to be a great husband. I want to thank you for loving my wife, Kay, and making her feel so important to the family. I want to thank you for loving my 3 girls, your grandchildren, and embracing them as part of the family. Thank you for serving the community and showing me what it took every day to be a servant of New Westminster. Thank you for your humility. Thank you for your integrity. Thank you for the great man you have been. And I took his hand, I placed it on his chest. I kissed him on the forehead, and my father died. And my question to you is, what do you think I would give for one more day with my dad? One more day to tell him how special he is. One more day to listen to his wisdom. One more day to tell him I loved him. But that was not to be. My father had gone. That's how important a day is, you see. Sometimes we can dismiss a day as though it had no value because we think there's going to be so many more. But there isn't. I don't know whether you love Hillary Clinton or hate Hillary Clinton. It makes no difference. But when she was thinking of running as a senator in New York many years ago, she couldn't make up her mind. What should I do today? And her father, George Trudeau from Little Rock, Arkansas, managed a Catholic boys' school, wrote her a letter out of the blue. And the letter said, Dear Hillary, I have been teaching and preaching on this one issue for 50 years. When you meet your maker, the first question he asks you is not about the 10 Commandments. That's going to come sooner or later. The first question he asks you is, what did you do with the time and the talent I gave you? Run, Hillary, run. Well, she ran and she got in. But the question is that we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing with the time and the talent that you have been given on a daily basis? I have 3 wonderful girls, Samantha, Rebecca, and Amanda. And on January the 15th, it was Rebecca's birthday. I think it was a Wednesday or Thursday. I hadn't talked to her all day. I got home. She lives in Vancouver. I put on my jeans and running shoes and sweatshirt, and I picked up the phone, and I said, Happy birthday, sweetie pie. Happy birthday. She said, It's about time you phoned, Dad. She said, if you hadn't phoned by midnight, you would have been in deep trouble. I said, well, I'm happy birthday, you know. And then she asked those questions that dads really don't want to be asked at 5 after 7. She said, Dad, why don't you join us? Why don't you join us? So I said, you know what? We are going to have a party on the weekend. And I kind of made some excuse of why I couldn't be there. And I thought, I need to make a different decision. I need to make a different decision today. And so I made some excuse, hung up the phone, dashed upstairs, jumped in the shower, took off my clothes first, jumped in the shower, scrubbed up pretty good, put on my skivvies, drove the 40 minutes to the restaurant, walked in and said, Happy birthday, sweetie pie, happy birthday. And there was Rebecca and my 2 other girls and 8 of the kids that were hung around the house for many years and years and years. And we had the greatest birthday party ever. Now, I picked up the tab, and you would expect that. But on the drive home, I said, that was a very wise decision, Peter. Because if you're lucky, you might only be asked to do that 17 more times. The importance of a day, the importance of our thinking, the importance of the actions we take on that thinking. Don't view every day as a race necessarily to the end, but we need to be participants. I believe with all my heart that we become exactly what we think about all day long. Your homework. What do you think about all day long? Because that's what you're becoming. And if you don't want to become that, then you need to change your thinking. Thank you. Thank you.